Yeah.
Group 1, is there an encryption method that incorporates encrypting it and then encrypting it again and then encrypting it again? Or is there no point for that at all?
There is one, I can't think of it off the top of my head. I learned about it in my security course. What it was an outdated security method that wasn't secure. So what they did is actually encrypt it 3 times with the same security method, which then made the key large enough that it was secure. It's not something I looked up for this project, so I don't know it off the top of my head, but there is one where it actually encrypts the message 3 different times with the same algorithm using 3 different keys. And the combination of those 3 different keys is a key large enough that it's hard to crack.
That's actually really cool.
Andy, what do you want?
3 Musketeers.
There's Snickers and toys too.
Thanks.
Oh, does anyone have a better answer than that? Okay.
Yes.
How hard would you say it is to encrypt emails? Or just, is there an easy way to do it, I should say?
I think it would just depend on the algorithm that they use for your emails your email host. I mean, because essentially, for a text, it's just plain text file, so it's kind of easier to encrypt that. Whereas if we're seeing pictures or videos, it might be a little bit more complex than that. It would just depend on what the file type was and who your host is, and what algorithms they choose to use.
You mentioned RSA encryption. What's the current, what's the current bit range that RSA uses today, for most businesses? I know they use, there's varying levels of how long that number is per se.
So when they talked about, and Matt, correct me, but when they talked about Hickman in the book, we were researching it, each of those prime numbers that they picked were 1024-bit numbers. So these are very, very large prime numbers that it's almost impossible for anyone to crack. The problem also with the RSA method is that while it's very secure, and they actually said it's been 30 years since they've implemented this, and it's never been cracked before. The only problem with it is that it's very, very slow because of how large the numbers are and how long it takes them to encrypt the messages and how long it takes them to decrypt the messages. So it's kind of a trade-off for that. So they're very big.
That's actually something I meant to mention, I forgot in the RSA portion, that since it's so slow, they typically only use it to exchange symmetric keys, and then they'll use the symmetric keys to continue the conversation or the communication from there.
Okay. Other questions?
Thank you. What kind of candy do you want? Oh, give me some Twix. Please. Cam Newton.
Okay.
Alright, what encryption methods do they use to store passwords like the website?
What encryption methods they use to store passwords?
Well, that depends on the website again. Same with the email. Some may use RSA, probably not because it is so slow, but it varies by website. If it's like a smaller website that's not expecting to have any attacks, it could probably just have the classic number swap. But if it's like a government website, they probably are using something more advanced that would be more difficult to crack.
A lot of people use hash functions. That's not something we talked about, but a lot of people use hash functions to encrypt passwords as well. And hash functions are basically one-way encryption. Like once you encrypt it, you can't decrypt it. And then the way you would check to see if the password's correct, you would then hash the value that they gave you when they're entering their password to see if it matches the hash value that's already in the database.
Yeah, that's usually used for passwords. Which group were you?
This is based on all the research you did and that you know, why do you think that encryption is not more in use by the general public? That is. That's just for you.
What do you mean by the general public?
Well, I mean, we don't see, I mean, email's not encrypted. We can encrypt email, but why do you think that?
Well, I mean, I think for a lot of people, just like everyday people, it's not completely necessary because if you're on the email server, you're on a secure connection, which is already encrypting it for you. And unless you're like talking about something, I don't know, something really important or something, there's no real reason to go above whatever they're doing. And and some places do have encrypted services. Like when I had an internship this summer, there was an option to encrypt our emails if we were talking about like sensitive information. So some places do, I think that was on Outlook, but it was like a modified version, I'm not sure exactly, but some do have encryption that encrypts the actual messages as well as the connection.
So in the website, user can log into the system, right? Then since like HTTP is like kind of like stateless, and hijack usually happens. But like, how do you prevent hijack?
Like someone hijacking the connection of the website?
Oh yes, because like the cookies, right? If I kind of like copy the cookie and use it, and there's like session number whatever, I can actually maybe access to that stuff. And like, how do you prevent it?
So you're talking about in their browser, they have the stored cookies of their username and passwords, and how you can prevent someone from getting it?
But yes, it's based on like HTTP request or response.
Okay. Well, I think it also would depend on the browser you're using, because they have their own methods of encrypting those passwords, or so no one else who's like trying to get access to your computer can just go in and grab those things. I think also it's depending on how you set up your application. Using like a Java servlet, or if it's just a PHP page, they have their own encryption methods for when you type in those passwords to send them. But again, you always have to be careful, especially on the web. With putting passwords in. If you have current viruses or whatever kind of viruses you have on your computer, they can very easily get into those things, depending on how up to date your system is and what kind of security flaws you have. It's probably the best answer I can come up with.
Okay.
You guys know what the most secure algorithm is? Like the most secure algorithm?
For encryption?
For encryption, yes.
You probably ask the government.
I would say RSA, just because it's been around for so long. If it's been around for that long, it just seems like it's more reasonable to give it more security. Or
I'm not sure if RSA is right, but I mean, based on the fact that it's been around for so long, and just the mathematical problem of trying to factor large numbers like that has literally been around for thousands of years, and mathematicians still haven't cracked that problem. It's pretty strong. I don't know if it's the strongest, but it is pretty strong.
Okay. What group was that? Go ahead.
When we use HTTPS, the secure HTTP, who does the encryption? Is the browser that does the encryption? Or
Yes, then.
Can you repeat that? I couldn't really hear you.
Who secures like an HTTPS? If you go to those sites, who's securing those?
Who's encrypting the communication? Is it your browser? Is it some other application on your computer?
So whenever you go to an HTTPS website, the whoever owns the website has to get a secure connection, and this can be done by, I know I was on a website the other day and it said secured by Norton Internet Security. So in that case, Norton would be, but they don't always have to say who it's secured by. It could be secured by themselves, but occasionally your browser will pop up. If you try and add an S to an HTTP website that didn't have any secure protocols on it, it'll say that it was trying to access a web page that the website signed its own security certificate. And so in that case, it's the website trying to sign its own security certificate, which generally it's a third party, or if it is like a big company like Wells Fargo or a bank, it's probably done by them in-house.
Yeah. Also, the secure socket layer is in between the application layer and the transport layer. That's where the SSL happens, the HTTPS encryption happens. So it's done by the networking software in there, in between those two layers. Which group was that? Okay, same group.
What's the difference between SSL and TSL?
Different algorithm. Do you guys have any more questions? If not, let's applaud the presenters.